Do folks get to sign the book? Should I pass it around?
Yeah, maybe we should pass it around.
There's a pen, too.
That's a good idea.
Sometimes we're not that successful, especially with our bus station.
Yeah.
Oh, great, thank you. No, she's behind us.
Just so folks know what's going on, I'm going to take some traditional, can you hear me? Some traditional earth from the land of Israel to go in with the coffin, and then we're going to have the vault cover put on, and we'll continue with the service. And at the end of the service, those who wish to participate by taking one or two shovelfuls of dirt That's considered traditionally to be an act of chesed, of loving kindness, of chesed shel emet. It's something that Marvin can't do for us, but we can do for him. So I'm going to start the process now, then we'll say prayers and we'll participate together after.
And friends, at this time we are going to begin services for Marvin David Berns. I would ask if anyone has a cell phone or any other noise-making device, if you could take a moment now to please turn that off or place them in the silent mode. Just a brief note for those of you who are attending today, either in person or via the live stream, there are condolences that are everyone is invited to attend at the hospitality room at 4300 Marine Drive in Chicago. And again, that's today following the interment. That's the hospitality room at 4300 Marine Drive in Chicago, Friday upon return from the cemetery until 4 p.m. That information is available on the folder that you received today if you're attending, and it's also available on our website as well. And officiating our services today is Rabbi Larry Edwards.
Esa einai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Al yitain lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm, God will guard your soul, your going and coming now and forever. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitcha uvoecha me'ata v'ad olam. Inside your brochure are the words to the 23rd Psalm. Scholars may differ about translations, but this is the King James translation. Whether it's accurate or not, it's pretty accurate, really. It is classic English poetry, and I invite you to read it with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. From the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Myrna, I didn't ask you when you came. Do you want to say something? Or would you like to? Come. Myrna, dear friend Myrna, will say a few words, and other words obviously can be shared afterwards, but at the gathering. But come.
I don't have anything prepared, but I recognize many of you here and many old friends. And it's really hard for me to believe that I was at Marvin's mother's funeral, and that's a few years ago. I kind of think of Marvin's passing. I think of Marvin's passing as he's going home to James, and to me they're indivisible. It was always, for so many years, James and Marvin, James and Marvin. And I find solace in that, and I'm sure that all of you that knew them also find that. I do want to share, I don't have a funny story. It's just not my personality. But I do want to share a lovely little story that when my father died a few years ago in Toronto, my aunt arranged for a rabbi, and he was an Orthodox rabbi. And after the funeral, he came up to me and he said, "Are you going to be doing a shiva?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Do you do anything and light a candle?" I said, "I really don't." And he said, "Well, I want you to promise me one thing. And this is what I'd like to share with you all." He said, "You live in Chicago in an apartment building?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Does it have a front door? Does it have a back door?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I want you to promise me that when you go home, you will leave from one of the doors and you will talk to your father as you walk around the block and share everything that you see with him, and keep talking until you reach the other door, and then go into your building through that door. And that way you'll be walking your father from one life to another." I want to share that with you, and it's a lovely thing to do for Marvin. If you want to take a walk and speak to Marvin, I think that would be beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Myrna. I never heard that before, so I like that. I'm going to remember that. So, Marvin. Hebrew name, Eliyahu David. Preceded in death by his beloved James, as we know. Also his loving brother Robert, and his parents Philip and Pauline. Marvin grew up in Albany Park, the launch pad for many fascinating lives, and his was no exception. Marvin's creative juices flowed into the world of advertising back in the era we now think of as the Mad Men era. Chicago was an important center of that industry back then. I don't know the specifics of Marvin's contributions. If anyone here does, I'd love to hear about them later. It would not surprise me to learn that he had a hand in one or more of the jingles that a few of us might still remember. During their half-century together, Marvin and James tried out a number of different pursuits. The greenhouse on East Oak Street was the first flower and plant shop on the north side. Antiques was another pursuit, and some of their trophies decorated, or maybe some would say took over, their wonderful apartment. I recall that James was rejected by the Army because he was a dancer. You think, the Army would say, dancer, physically fit. We want this guy, but not then. I guess Marvin was not a dancer because he served in both World War II and the Korean War. The fact that he has asked that memorial contributions be made to Honor Flight Chicago shows how important that part of his life was to him. Honor Flight organizes the Day of Honor in Washington, D.C., visiting the memorials built in tribute to the service of our veterans from World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. The trip is provided at no cost to the veteran and is intended as a heartfelt thank you. I'm taking this from their website. I looked it up. For their service and sacrifice from a grateful nation. Marvin did not want to pretend to frontline heroism, but he served and was proud of having served. Victoria, who was Marvin's escort when he went on one of those honor flights to D.C., noted that he made a deep impression on her. Her students all wrote letters to Marvin one year for Veterans Day, and he responded to each one. That is true class. James's sisters, Terry and Sherry, who regret not being able to be here today, have many fond memories, including learning how to make an acceptable cup of coffee. When in doubt, always add another big scoop. That was Marvin's instruction. And in a way, that seems to be symbolic of how Marvin wanted to live life, to the fullest, with joy, and don't sweat the small stuff. When Jim was bent out of shape about some internal co-op issue, Marvin would say, is this right? Or was it Sean? Oh, it was Sean. Sean was bent out of shape. Marvin would say, "Dear, is it really worth the bother?" I'm vice president of my co-op board, and I have to keep that in mind. Jim and Sean, who moved into 4300 North Marine 6 years ago, immediately became part of Marvin's family. They have been utterly devoted to him in these last years and insist that it was their pleasure. They are sure that their choice of residence was not only because the apartment was nice, but so that they could meet Marvin. In Yiddish, we would call that bashert. It was destined. Regular dinners together, which must also have included dessert. I think Marvin always insisted on that. Trips to the symphony, opera, the Art Institute, a road trip to Galena, Illinois. And during these past years, they were part of the same COVID pod. If Marvin was running late, he would say, "That's okay, dear, you'll take the impact for me." Charm, always charming. Maybe calling everyone dear was a way of getting around remembering names. But who would not want to be called dear, especially by Marvin? Charming to the end, when a nurse asked, "Do you know where you are?" Marvin looked down, then looked up and said, "I'm sorry, my dear, but I just can't remember what hospital I'm in." This week, in the cycle of Torah readings, we're in the middle of the book of Genesis. And the portion for this week is called, in Hebrew, Toldot, generations, or history. It is primarily concerned with the earliest generations of ancient Israel. But we are all part of that story, in whatever generation we happen to live. Marvin and James did not have biological children of their own, but they were part of the great generation, not only the one that fought World War II, but the one that stood up for equality, that found a way through old and ugly prejudices and cleared a path for the generations that would come after. And indeed, their family has expanded to include all of us and others beyond. They stood up and protested way back when Anita Bryant brought her ugly anti-gay campaign to town. Oh, Florida, what are we going to do with you? And they lived lives of love and integrity, and now rest side by side, a loving couple. I first knew James because of his devoted involvement with Congregation Kol Ami, where he was a dedicated student of all things Jewish. Marvin was more, shall we say, reticent about Judaism and religion in general. Nevertheless, he could do his part when the time came. Jim told me that Marvin took charge of the Hanukkah blessings during the pandemic, venturing down to the lobby to record the lighting of the menorah to be zoomed to fellow residents. In fact, Marvin was open to all kinds of religious symbols, as long as they were beautiful. Beauty, the arts, culture were a priority, along with humor and charm. My wife Susan and I first met Marvin at a Grant Park concert and would often see him there with James. You could tell that they enjoyed each other's company, described then and now as a joyous ride through life together. So Marvin, now with James, once more, ride on. Finding my page. O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm that all things obey. Our life is a dance to a song we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then seems to cease. Whence the melody, and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life and the answer to all its mysteries. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. May the memory of Marvin David Berns endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. I'll ask you to rise for the traditional prayer El Male Rachamim, and then I'll recite a couple of the prayers of committal and invite you to participate in the burial. El Male Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamsei Menucham Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim U'Tahorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Eliyahu David Ben Philip and Pauline Shehalach Le'olamo Bal harachamim yastirehu b'seiter knafav la'olamim v'yitzror b'tzror ha'chayim et nishmato Adonai hu nachlato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marvin David Berns, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated if you wish, and I have a couple more prayers to recite, and then I will lead the way. And just, you'll notice that when I shovel the first shovelful of dirt, I'll use the back of the shovel. You don't have to do this necessarily, but it's symbolic of our reluctance about saying goodbye. And then I'll do a couple more, and I'll place the shovel back in the earth so that the next person can fully participate in the mitzvah by picking up the shovel, doing a couple of shovelfuls, and then putting it back. You can just follow me. It's not required, but those of you who are able and who wish to, it's considered a mitzvah to participate. If the shovel is too much, there's also a smaller bucket with a little shovel for some earth, and you can participate that way too. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. God gave, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem betzalmo v'san v'chilkel etchem betuvo v'hemit etchem badin v'nata betochachem chaye olam. Baruch atah Adonai dayan ha'emet. We praise you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in your goodness, who causes all of us to die and who implants immortal life within us. We praise you, O God, Judge of truth. Those of you who wish to recite Kaddish with me now, I invite you to stand if you're able, and then we'll proceed with the earth. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrachi rutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudisha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chaim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May God grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us.
Friends, at this time, you are all welcome to come forward and place some earth into the grave. We would let you know that we'll have the register book at the podium again. For those of you who did not have an opportunity to sign, you'll have a chance to do that after you've placed some earth into the grave.
Forward. There's a second shovel on the other side if some want to go around.
Oh, of course.
If anyone wants to come around, there's a second shovel.
Yes, glad you They gave us, it's all right, twice around.